I'm going to call the October 18, 2023 Williamsburg Planning Commission meeting to order. Heather, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Hamilton?
Here.
Mr. Kale?
Here.
Mr. Tarley?
Here.
Mr. Boswell?
Here.
Mr. Granger?
Here.
Ms. Liebel? Here.
Thank you. Our first order of business is the approval of the minutes from our August 16 meeting, which was the last time we met. Are there any changes, any edits to the minutes as they are posted online? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the August 16, 2023 minutes as posted?
So moved.
I second.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Kale?
Aye.
Mr. Tarley?
Aye.
Mr. Boswell?
Aye.
Mr. Granger?
Aye.
Ms. Liebel?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Those of you that picked up the agenda out in the foyer, there is one switch. Something got moved out of the normal order that we do it. We normally have, at this point, and we will have, based on the online agenda, an open forum, which is an opportunity for anyone to come and address the commission on matters that are not on today's agenda. I know we have several. Sir? Okay, well, I am talking in my normal voice. I will use the voice I use with my undergraduate students who are sleeping in the back row, and get a little bit louder. So this is an opportunity for anyone to come and speak to us about matters that are not on today's agenda. If anyone would like to do that, now is the time. There will be time to speak on the agenda items coming up. Okay, not seeing anybody stampeding toward the microphone. We'll close that open forum and we'll move on to consent agenda item. We have one consent agenda item today, SPR 23-001. Consent agenda items we typically vote on without a presentation or discussion unless a member of the commission wants to remove it from the consent agenda. Is there a motion to remove this item from the consent agenda? Hearing no motion, I'm going to ask, is there a motion to approve consent agenda item SPR 23-001 as presented?
I so move.
Second.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Kale?
Aye.
Mr. Tarley?
Aye.
Mr. Boswell?
Aye.
Mr. Granger?
Aye.
Ms. Liebel?
Aye.
All right, thank you. That moves us to our public hearings. The first is PCR 22-024 and PCR 23-019, Blue Green Vacations Unlimited, Inc. And Ms. Griffin, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Chairman Boswell and members of the Planning Commission. The city has received a request from Platinum Management, LLC to rezone 12 parcels located at the corner of Penniman Road and Page Street. They're requesting the rezoning from the Corridor Business District, this is the B2 district, to the Limited Business Residential District, which is the LB3 district. They're also requesting a special use permit to construct multifamily dwellings and townhouses. The property consists of approximately 17.92 acres. Again, it's located at the corner of Penniman Road and Page Street. The owner is Blue Green Vacations Unlimited, LLC. And again, they're requesting B2 to the LB3 with the special use permit. In total, the applicant is requesting the construction of 182 apartments and 53 townhouses for a total of 235 units. The properties altogether is 17.92 acres. In 2006, the city did approve a 400-unit timeshare to be constructed here. As everyone can see, that did not happen. The timeshares are considered commercial uses and not residential. The applicant proposes the construction of 3 multifamily buildings. And these buildings, I'll try to make sure, are seen here. Here's 1, 2, and then 3. These buildings altogether would again have 182 apartments and flats, and then the 53 townhomes are located here, some off of Penniman Road. There's also some interiorly here, and then the remainder are on this entrance of Penniman Road. If approved, the project is estimated to begin in the first quarter of 2025, with the estimated completion date in the fourth quarter of 2026. This is a conceptual site plan of the proposed development. There are 2 entrances, which I just showed you here. One is here at Penniman Road and Broadway. Broadway then turns into Parkway Drive, and the other one here is off of Penniman Road. The main entrance will then come into the clubhouse, which is located here. There's a clubhouse and green space. Behind the clubhouse is a pool, and then other social gathering opportunities here. There's also a park that's here, and this park is for the residents of the multifamily complex, and then there's also a dog park here. Here you have a playground, and as you can see, there's opportunities for recreational and open space. The developer is having several passive recreational opportunities. The zoning ordinance requires 20% of the property to be landscaped open space, and they're actually providing, this is 3.583 acres. The development will exceed the ordinance requirements for landscape open space and has a total of 9 acres of landscape and recreational space. The ordinance then requires 15% of tree canopy cover for residential projects, and this will provide, they will actually provide 4.14 acres of tree coverage, and the required is 2.68. All the units in this development are for rent. The proposal is to have 58 one-bedroom apartments, 118 two-bedroom apartments, and 6 three-bedroom apartments. All of the townhouses will be 3 bedrooms. The townhouses that are in the rear here are the only ones that will be front garage loading townhouses. The remainder, all of the other townhouses that front off of Penniman and the ones interiorly will all be rear loading garage townhouses. 304 parking spaces are required for the apartments, and the developer is offering 325 spaces. 119 parking spaces are required for the townhouses, and the developer has offered 159, which includes garage spaces. Now, this is a lot of information, so bear with me. I want to make sure there are no questions afterwards. You have all of the information. So, there was a traffic impact analysis conducted for the proposed development, and the applicant did this analysis, and I will say TIA, and that just stands for Traffic Impacts Analysis, and it concluded that a traffic signal is not warranted by the project on opening day in 2026. However, the existing intersections, particularly at Page and Penniman, which is here, and 2nd and Parkway, which you can't see, but imagine it being up further, are negatively impacted. And what is used is what we call a level of service, and the level of service analysis is a qualitative measure used to relate the quality of motor vehicle traffic services. And this measure is used to evaluate roads and intersections. Quality levels are assigned either an A through an F, A being the best and F not being so good. And the various factors that are considered are speed and congestion and density. And based on the TIA, the level of service at Page and Penniman drops from a D to an E. And this is an intersection that is already a safety concern due to site distance constraints. Our city engineer asked that the TIA include a diversion at Penniman and Page to determine the impact. And this diversion would be no left-hand turn off of onto Page Street. If this action were taken, it would solve a safety concern with site distances, and motorists would then seek an alternative route to make a left onto Page Street. And it's logical to conclude that Parkway Drive would become the new route. With the installation of the diversion, a signal then would be warranted at Parkway and 2nd. And while the applicant does not endorse a no left-hand turn at Penniman Road and Page Street, they do agree that with this development, it will impact traffic. And so they have voluntarily proffered a one-time contribution to the city in the amount of $347.17 per unit to contribute to the installation of a traffic signal at 2nd and Parkway. This would be paid on a per-unit basis at the time of the issuance of a certificate of occupancy when someone would be able to rent the apartment. A fiscal impact analysis was also conducted for this development, and I will only highlight a few things. This came back saying that between 2024 and 2043, the project will produce around $17 million in gross revenue against $12 million in city expenditures for a total net fiscal impact of $5 million. The estimated permit fees associated with this project are $70,000. And the applicant is also estimating that there would be 33 students that would live in this particular development. The average expenditure would be $435 per resident, as well as $10,207 per pupil. And this number is derived from the city's FY24 budget. This is an additional cost of $336,831 for new pupils per year. Now, going on to the analysis regarding the rezoning. This property, as I said before, is Corridor Business District. The intent of this particular district is to provide for future hotels, restaurants, and tourism on major corridors that are oriented to the automobile. If someone wants to build multifamily in this particular district, the property can be no more than 70% multifamily. The remaining must be non-residential floor area, and it has to be built simultaneously with the multifamily use. That is the current B2 status of this particular property. I just wanted to go over something very important. We have several different planning areas in the city, and this is a part of the Northeast Triangle planning area. This area butts York County to the north and east, and the CX Railroad to the south, and also land owned by CW Foundation on the west. It's a diverse area. There's single-family detached houses, condominiums, multifamily, and commercial uses. It's also where we are proud of our Edge District that was designated in 2019. This does have the largest concentration of multifamily dwelling units in the city. Right now, there's 1,348 total dwelling units. This is a number based on the 2020 census. There are around 1,006 multifamily units, and then the remaining 300 units are single-family detached. The comprehensive plan designation for this particular area, and as you can see here, the brown is the area in question, the 17.9 acres, is designated in a comprehensive plan for mixed use having 8 or more dwelling units per net acre. The mixed use land use category is intended to provide a degree of flexibility in uses. It should have a range of office, it could have a range of residential, office, and mildly scaled commercial uses. Specifically for this portion of Penniman and Page, the comprehensive plan actually speaks to this particular property. And it says mixed use is implemented by the revised LB3 Limited Business Residential District for the area between Penniman Road and the CSX Railroad located in the Northeast Triangle planning area. So in some instances, the comprehensive plan may broadly speak of properties. In this instance, it specifically calls out the property in question. And so hence the applicant is asking for a rezoning to the LB3 zoning district. Now, this talks about what exactly is the intent of the LB3 zoning district. It says it is to provide high-quality mixed-use development in the Northeast Triangle planning area in areas designated as mixed-use land. So it's very specific. Potential mixed-use development components could be residential uses, commercial, office, art galleries, hotels and timeshares, and live workspace for artists. And this would mean that a master plan would come in with a mix of these uses. It does not say what the mix has to be, but it does say that there should be a mix. There are some examples of other mixed-use developments in the city, and I just wanted to highlight some of those. They're not in the same zoning district, but I do think it's important to highlight. High Street is zone ED2. In that particular zoning district, you can have no more than 40% of land that's designated to residential. In Quarter Path, it's zone ED, which is economic development, and you can have no more than 40% of residential there. And Midtown Row is B3, and again, you can have no more than 76% multifamily and townhouses. So The B3 district is revised because it does not give you a percentage of residential that you have to have, but it does say you can have residential by special use permit, but you should have mixed-use components in the development. The applicant is also voluntary proffered on top of the signalization that I just talked about. They have also voluntary proffered 4 additional conditions, and the first one is that the master plan would be consistent with the approval of City Council. It also has proffered that they will follow the guidelines of the ARB because this is in a corridor protection district, which I will talk about in a few minutes. Also, they have proffered not to contain more than 235 residential dwelling units. While the city does not have an inclusionary zoning ordinance, which requires all developments to have some portion as affordable housing, this particular development will not have affordable housing units on the property, but they have proffered to provide $1,500 per unit to go into an affordable housing kitty for the city to use at some point in time for affordable housing units. Staff recommendation then is that the rezoning of this property is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan specifically says that this particular property is now zone B2 and it should be zoned to LB3. So in this case, that portion of the request is consistent. I will now talk about the special use permit. Special use permits are for those uses, if not specifically regulated, can have an undue impact or hardship on the surrounding neighborhood, the character of that neighborhood, and the zoning district. And so for that reason, the zoning ordinance requires us to look at 6 different criteria in making a decision in granting a special use permit. And if at any time one of these criteria is not met, then the special use permit would have to be denied. The first criteria is the use in harmony with the adopted comprehensive plan. I've laid out before you that the comprehensive plan calls for this property to be mixed use, and so it is staff's opinion that the request for multifamily here is not consistent with the comprehensive plan because there's not a mixed use component. The second is this particular development in harmony with the intent and purpose of the zoning district. The LB3 zoning district I've gone over requires mixed-use components. Again, there's not a mixed-use component at this time for this particular development, and so staff concludes that it is not consistent or in harmony with the LB3 zoning district. The third is this particular development in harmony with the character of adjacent properties and neighborhoods and then existing and proposed development. This particular area, as we've talked about, is a northeast triangle, and it's very specific on what type of development we want in this particular area. So staff also concludes that it's not in character with the northeast triangle corridor area plan. The fourth criteria, fifth and sixth criteria talk about design. This particular property, as I've mentioned before, is in the Corridor Protection District, and so they have been to the Architectural Review Board. The Architectural Review Board has reviewed this on 2 different occasions conceptually and offered comments, and the applicant did everything that the Architectural Review Board has requested, and my assumption would be when they come back, this would be something that would be approved by the ARB based on their comments. This is a rendering of the clubhouse that you would see when off of Broadway and Penniman. This is a rendering of the rear loading townhouses. The top shows the front, and then the back shows the rear of the townhouses. These are renderings of the buildings. You'll see that some buildings have garages at the bottom. Here, Building 3 has garages. And so In looking at if this particular development would be adequately serviced by essential public services such as streets, drainage facilities, fire protection, and public water and sewer facilities, we've talked about the TIA, so I won't go through that again. They have met with our engineers. They do have some questions that need to be answered and that would be answered during the site plan review process if this was approved. And so we do feel that they have adequate public service for this particular development. The proposed use shall not result in destruction, loss, or damage of any feature determined to be of significant ecological, scenic, or historic importance. They are not going to destroy any of those three things, and so we do feel that it is in keeping with that particular criteria. And then, will the use be designed, sited, and landscaped? I've talked to you previously about the landscaping. They're over and beyond their landscaping requirements. We've worked very well with them regarding design. All of the questions that we asked regarding design and where particular things were, they've made those changes. So we do feel like this particular development does meet the requirements for design, siting, and landscaping. Staff recommendation. So, since the development proposal does not meet criteria 1 and 3, again, the zoning ordinance says if it doesn't meet even just one, then we wouldn't be able to approve the development for a special use permit. So, as I've highlighted, staff does not conclude that they meet the criteria 1 through 3, so therefore staff has to recommend denial of the request for SUP. Staff recommends that the applicant consider adding meaningful mixed-use components to this development. There's two places, one in the comprehensive plan and one in the zoning ordinance, that talk about a master plan. A suitable master plan has to be brought forth that could be approved in order for this property to be rezoned. So the idea is that the property would not be rezoned if there was not a master plan that the city council was willing to approve. So with that, staff does agree that the rezoning is fitting and does meet the comprehensive plan requirements that it be from B2 to LB3. However, based on the language in the comp plan and also the zoning ordinance, and it states, because of the strategic and sensitive location of the historic triangle planning area, a rezoning to LB3 should not be approved until an acceptable master plan has been submitted for the property. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And of course, we do have the applicant here who is able to answer questions if you have them.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Ms. Griffin. Questions from commissioners?
Nothing.
No? Okay, we're going to open up the public forum. I believe Mr. Zhang has a presentation, and then I think we'll hear from the representative of the developer as well. Mr. Zhang?
Let's just make sure. Okay, just want to make sure. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Benny Zhang. I'm with the Williamsburg office of Kaufman Knowles. It's my pleasure to be here today with, on behalf of the applicant. Just to introduce the team real quickly, to my right is the principal of my client, Platinum Management, Mr. Brad Waitzer. Also to my right is Mr. Dexter Williams, who can answer any questions. He's the traffic engineer. Just a little bit about my client here, Mr. Waitzer. This is a third-generation family-owned business. He has extensive experience with the Hampton Roads area, and he's familiar with the Williamsburg area, having developed the Monticello at Powhatan development 24 years ago. What sets him apart from other developers is he's a long-term owner. He also does the management himself. And to exemplify that, the Monticello at Powhatan is an example, 24 years under his ownership. And he's advised me that within the last 4 years, he's pumped in $5 million in capital improvements to bring that development up to standards. The bottom line is he's the real deal. Mr. Chair has asked me to give an efficient presentation, which a lot of this has been thoroughly provided by Ms. Tavia, who's excellent giving that presentation. So I'm going to go through with these slides. These materials have been included in your packet. Ms. Griffin has done a wonderful job describing and orienting us where the project site is. I'm just going to leave these slides just in case we need to refer to them back. You've seen the conceptual site plan. You can see it's well developed, and you can look. It's not a strip mall. You can see the vast amount of natural open space that's spread out throughout the site. And we think the client has done a great job, and we're pleased to present a well-sited open space concept here. One of the hallmark aspects of my client's developments is the robust amenities that are provided, the social and community-based programming. And we'll touch with base a little bit here, but just to make a quick comment, again, these are in your packets. You've just seen these from Ms. Griffin's presentation, but this is not, we're not talking about just a pool here in terms of amenities. We've got a lot more that we can offer. We actually have to give kudos to staff. We've worked very well with staff. We've incorporated their meaningful comments to the extent that we could. And one of the great aspects that Ms. Griffin suggested is, why not do a park? So we proposed, we thought it's a great idea, and we are proposing a 13,000 square feet private park that's going to be at the intersection of that Page and Penman Road. It's going to provide for an attractive view shed, and also it's publicly accessible, even though it's going to be a private park. So if you're eating at the Colonial Pancake House, want to be able to sit at the benches and eat your delicious diner food, you can do so. Ms. Griffin talked about the clubhouse. I just want to go a little bit more into it and tie in my client's robust amenities package, which I think encapsulates a lot of this. This is the anchor for our development. It's 7,500 square feet. It's going to feature a fitness center, business conference center, a yoga room. We might see Ms. Griffin there if she does yoga there, and a lot of space in addition to the pool out front, and as Ms. Griffin said, a playground near towards the south side of the site. You've seen this up already. I'm going to go real quick with this. We met with the ARB twice. We've incorporated their comments, as Ms. Griffin said. This is the colonial revival architectural style. High quality. Look at the colors. You have this in your packet. This is well designed, well thought and committed. This is a rear elevation of what the townhouse may look like. These are examples of what the front elevations for the apartments would look, or sorry, these are still townhouses. I got ahead of myself. These are what the apartments look like. You see the front elevation and the rear elevation. This is for the other buildings. Incorporates a well-designed colonial revival. And I will also mention that from the ARB, we have had positive comments in terms of the materials that my client has been suggesting. Wanted to talk a little bit briefly with the commission. There were 400 timeshares approved for this site. What we're talking about here is a more intense use, twice the amount of traffic. You can see that in the traffic analysis, the 140-page report in your packet here. And you also have competition with our existing hotels, which we've had a citywide policy discussion about struggling hotels. So it'll compete against existing hotels. You also have a transit population. The city has had a committed campaign to improve the Edge District in order to grow and have that synergy with the Northeast Plain area. Transit population will not cut it. But in contrast, for my client, what they propose, it's a less intense use. You've got a long-term hold. My client has been known to have long-term tenants, and we're talking about William & Mary professors, we're talking about CW workers, we're talking about people who want to stay in the area, enjoy the amenities, be able to walk across the street to the existing adjoining commercial uses and be able to enjoy with that site. We'll also add that the comp plan does state the site visibility difficulties that have lingered with this property over 50 years that it's existed as commercial, suggesting that it probably is not a commercial use, is maybe perhaps not viable. Mr. Chair, if it may, I want to get to the biggest point, which is the position that staff had with their recommendation. We have worked, as I mentioned throughout this presentation, I breezed that by as quickly as I could, and again, a lot of it was captured by Ms. Griffin. But we were shocked and we were surprised when staff came out with the recommended denial, just because we have done what we thought incorporated a lot of the elements that they've asked for. We thought it went in line with the comprehensive plan. Our understanding of the staff's interpretation of mixed use is that each parcel that's rezoned with this SUP has to have a mix of uses within that parcel. We think that this runs counter to what generally has been perceived and accepted as a mixed-use area. And we need not look further to Newtown, and I'll cite other examples within the city. But if you drive by Newtown, you see some places that are solely residential. You see some places that are solely mixed use, and then you see other components that have the traditional mixed use area. The combined effect of the mix of uses is generally what we perceive and understand to be a mixed use area. Ms. Griffin also cited examples about High Street, Quarter Path, and another area of the city. If you look into those developments, you also see the same thing. You see certain aspects of Midtown Road, certain aspects that are residential. Some are solely commercial, and some have the true mixed-use component. We believe that our interpretation of the comprehensive plan is consistent and compatible with what's called for by the current comprehensive plan. So in other words, rather than each parcel that goes has to be designed with the mix of uses, the commercial and residential, by the totality of the Northeast Triangle, we think it would be more common sense to allow for my client's proposal to be solely residential that's complemented by the adjacent commercial uses that the Northeast Triangle has. I don't want to overstay my welcome, Mr. Chair, but I did have an example of there's one other site that's further down in the Northeast Triangle that's slated for the LB3 mixed-use area designation that we have a similar comparison with, and I would love to give that example if someone asks that question. With that, I hope that the commission, and urge the commission to give us a favorable recommendation, and our plan is consistent, compatible with the comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zhang. Any questions for Mr. Zhang? Okay, did your client want to speak as well? Okay. While he's coming to the podium, let me just mention for everyone, I have some speaker cards for the rezoning on Mill Neck. I don't have any speaker cards for this particular application. If you wanted to speak on this one, please make sure our clerk has a speaker card from you, because as of now I don't have any public speaker cards on this one. Go ahead, sorry. Just wanted to get that point in.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. I'm Brad Waitzer, the developer, and I'd really like to introduce us to you because I think it makes a big difference who we are. As a 36-year veteran of this business, I truly believe that the people involved in a development, more than any other factors, determine whether it contributes to rather than detracts from the communities in which it's located. As Benny said, we're a family business in its third generation. I'm trying to get the fourth generation involved, but they are a little reluctant. And our business practices reflect that it's a family business. I've been developing apartment communities since 1989, and unlike most developers today who quickly sell properties to generate quick returns, I've concentrated on long-term ownership since day one. That focus drives every decision: location, design, amenities, and most importantly, project management, property management, and capital spending, because we think in terms of decades rather than how most people think in years or in quarters. We target long-term renters because lowering resident turnover makes sense to us as long-term owners and makes our properties better communities and better neighbors. We do this in many ways, but most importantly, by enforcing strict qualifying standards on the front end, providing superior customer service, hiring and retaining the very best people, instituting and supporting active social programs, and including our residents in our regular charitable and community service activities, all designed to foster a sense of belonging. It works. Our resident turnover averages approximately half the norm in Hampton Roads, and that is especially important for nearby businesses looking to develop loyal followings like those in the Vibe District. Also, we take no outside investments, so decisions are made locally rather than by investment committees in New York or LA, or increasingly overseas. No outside pressures drive our decisions, and we are long-term residents of Hampton Roads, heavily involved, invested in its vitality, demonstrated in part by our community involvement and philanthropic activities, including large gifts to William and Mary. Our properties are managed by an in-house company, Signature Management, started by my father and grandfather in 1966. Despite regular requests by others, Signature only manages properties owned by its principals. Although relatively small, we win a disproportionate number of awards from local and national trade groups because our long-term singular outlook, simply put, drives us to work harder, reinvest profits into the properties, hire the very best people, and motivate them to excel. The results are clear and directly benefit the places in which we operate our business. Just this month, at the annual awards banquet for the Virginia Apartment and Management Association, 2 of our 7 awards in particular demonstrate who we are. First, we were chosen as the company with the leading community service programs in Hampton Roads, with employees, vendors, and residents as participants, and that's highly unusual. Community service and philanthropy are simply who we are. The second, and I think should be strongly relevant to this decision, and Benny mentioned it, is that one of our communities was chosen as the region's best. Of course, with enough money, any developer can develop beautiful new properties with all the bells and whistles. What makes this award especially noteworthy, however, is that it was won with a property built in 1999, 24 years old. And that's absolutely unheard of. Also unheard of, as Benny said, we invested $5 million in capital improvements in that property over the last few years. That's not investors' money, that's our money. And we do this because of our long-term focus. We as a family, and I include coworkers in that, are completely committed to the long-term health of our properties. We ensure long-term health by every decision we make over decades. And that singular focus, more than anything else, is why this will be a great asset for the city of Williamsburg. I thank you for your time and am available to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? No? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and open the public forum, and I have one card. I think there may be another one in process. Ms. Fairbanks, I have yours first, so if you'd like to come forward. What? Oh, okay. Mr. Cranbiel, I see, or Dr. Cranbiel, I see you back there with a card, so if you can get that to the clerk, or we'll call on you when we get through the others. Ms. Fairbanks, sorry.
Good afternoon. My name is Sabrina Fairbanks. I'm a property owner at 105 Washington Street, which is a stone's throw from this proposed development off of Capitol Landing Road. And kind of divert a little bit, my family are graduates of William and Mary. We're big supporters. We went to Charlottesville last week for the UVA William and Mary game. We're hosting people this weekend. And I have to tell you that we're very disappointed in the college for their 10-yeir plan, which they're spending $325 million on, and they're not adding one bed to their on-campus housing situation. We feel like, and how this connects here, is we feel like this is leading to a housing crisis for students, which is falling in your laps here in the city. And we feel like this is leading developers to look to develop these high-density complexes that the residents don't want, and we really don't feel like we can afford them. Fortunately, in 2021, some smart people developed a comprehensive plan that it appears that they had some forward thinking to try to restrict high-density developments. So now you've got developers coming and trying to find ways to circumvent our comprehensive plan. And, you know, we hope that you will stick to our comp plan and not allow that to happen for the sake of the students needing more housing. And really, I just want to close and just tell you a personal story. we had the opportunity to go for a very brief visit in the Nashville area to see a concert. And in this maybe 4-day period, 3 strangers talked to me about Williamsburg. The first was the front desk staff at the Marriott, and we're checking in, and he's telling us how much he likes Williamsburg, how pretty it is, how much he enjoyed his visit there. The second one was a little alarming. It was the person who checks your license in the airport, and he stepped out from behind his machine to talk to me, which was scary, to talk about Williamsburg and to talk about how pretty it is and how green it is and how he hopes to come back. And the last person was a naval officer who lives in Norfolk, who sat next to me on the plane on the way home, and he talked about how pretty Williamsburg is and small town, and he's going to leave Norfolk and probably move to the Nashville area because of the congestion. And I just think it's important to know that people who visit here and their memories of visiting here are a small town that's green, and nobody mentioned gridlock traffic from this many more residential units, and I hope that you will deny this request and keep our small town charming. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fairbanks. I would ask the clerk to, Heather, you're running the timer? Okay, if you would, that would be great. Thank you so much. Mr. Bland.
Be quite honest with you all. I don't think I would advocate anything or be positive about anything that didn't have an animal in it. I love the sheep pastures, I love the horse pastures, miss the duck ponds, and I like all that. But the developments have come, and one of the best things about Williamsburg that's held me here since 1962 is the undeveloped pieces of land that we've maintained for years, and those are disappearing. This is one example of something that been there forever. There used to be a hardware store there, but they tore that down, and that's it. So we're changing our community dramatically. It's getting claustrophobic, and it's not the result of the people so much, but it's what they bring with it. They need to go to the grocery, they need to drive to the grocery, they need to go out, they need to come back, and there's a crush of people that this city has never had before, and it's happening. And I can feel it. Every day you feel it. You come to the traffic light at 2nd Street, and you sit and wait and wait and wait. And they can't get in and out without the traffic light on 2nd Street. So I just want to say be very, very thoughtful in improving things that we can't handle. I don't think we can handle a lot more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bland. That's the only 2 speaker cards I have. I believe that Dr. Cranbuell is in the back with a speaker card, and he's going to come forward. If anybody else wants to speak on this, please make sure you have filled out a speaker card so the clerk has a record. Dr. Cranbuell,
Sure, do you want
good to see you, sir. You can just leave it there. That's
Okay.
fine.
I'm David Cranbuell. I live at 201 Harrison Avenue. I came here in 1970, which is 53 years ago. In my 3rd year here, I made an appointment to see Mayor Walker because the Isleys on the corner of Burns Lane and Jamestown Road wanted to turn their garage into an apartment. And, well, Mr. Walker, along with all those people back there, were the pillars of post-World War II. Well, Williamsburg quickly addressed that, and we've been dealing with that issue of housing ever since. And so I've been very interested in this, and that's why I'm here. I'm 80, so what happens if I see 10 years more like this, I'll be very happy. But I'm really caring about Williamsburg. So what is Williamsburg? Well, it's a G7 city. Does anybody remember that? That's huge. We have Colonial Williamsburg. It is the premier historical preservation site in the world. I did 30 years of working with oil companies, and I was in Norway where they were have built a restored city. It's all uses Colonial Williamsburg knowledge. And we have at this time, we're very blessed with the president of Colonial Williamsburg. We've always had great leadership, but Cliff has many unique properties. So what are we about? We're about a city that's supposed to be preserving the architecture and the ambiance of our city, not just for us, but for the world and for visitors. Okay, now, so how does this fit in? First of all, I appreciate what you said, and Benny's a good friend of mine because he worked on such small things as the bus system and was very supportive of my wife, who doesn't drive and takes the buses everywhere. But I do take exception to one very important point. Page Street is going to become the major entrance to Colonial Williamsburg. And this is on Page Street, if I understand my geometry correctly. And we have beautiful houses that have been developed on what I call the west side, although it's the northwest side if you get your compass out. And so how we develop the properties on the other side is critical. Second of all, in terms of traffic, when I go to Virginia Beach, I take Penniman Road. It's very relaxing, it's easy, and so forth. But the notion that this won't create a huge amount of traffic is just wrong. It is a price one would pay for how that's developed. And all of those people, professors and students and all these other people, they're going to come into town. So they're going to go to the intersection of Penniman Road and Page Street. And the most important traffic intersection is going to be right there, because that's where you're going to go most of the time, unless you're going to Newport News, which hopefully you're not, because we want you to shop in Williamsburg. Now let's look at a big thing. I tried to send the email to each of you, and I got all messed up, and that's why I had to run here, and I'm still partially out of breath. But the big picture is, where are we going? Okay, the comprehensive plan predicts about now we have 15 to 16,000 people. The exact population of undergraduates at the college is going to be 6,800, and it's going to hold there. We have over 1,200 graduate students. So that means out of 16,000, if we take the higher number, 8,000 are people who stay here 3 to 5 years. That means 50% of our population is, not long-term, to put it in a positive way. And this city rests on all the committees, everything, the people who are here 5 years or more. Those are the people who understand the city and care about it. And we all rented apartments. And by the way, there's nothing against how you do your properties. The question is how it ought to be designed to meet our needs. Our needs are for people who are going to live here for some significant amount of time. And obviously we want housing for other things. But let's look at the facts. Our town is set up for rental real estate. It's beautiful. It's almost made in heaven. And by the way, I own a house that's rented to students. So, and I'm also a co-owner of the Ely Cafe. So, and I have my own business, by the way, working with international oil companies. So I'm very concerned about the town. And we have 8,000 quasi-residents who are here who tend to stay here for a long part of time. Now we have, according to Tevye, who's a great addition, beautiful addition to our town, we have over 1,000 applications for units. I estimate that 2 to 2.5, something like that, people will be in those units. Many of them are, because of past zoning, are automatically approved almost. Although everyone should go to be under the Architectural Review Board. Nobody should be exempt from that ever, no matter what. But the point is, we are going to have approximately 2,000 plus people added to our community in the next few years. We already know the development at Governor's Village, I guess it's called, was governor's in before, and we already know at the Spotswood, it's going to come back, and that's another 1,000 people. But they're more long-term, so I'm not so worried. It just needs to be designed right.
I'm going to ask you just to wrap up because you're at your
Okay,
5
so
minutes.
the points are the following. We will be increasing our population if we approve these properties by 25% growth over 3 to 4 years. That's too fast. Second thing, the one thing we do have control over is when we rezone. That's pretty sharp. And I totally support Tevia's concept that we shouldn't rezone this. And furthermore, I am very concerned about taking commercial property and turning it into residential. We will, with 2,000 plus more people coming in 3 to 4 years, we'll have already saturated the growth of our fire people, and we'll have to put a fire station out there as these things get, plus quarter path and all that. We're going to already saturate our police. And what about our schools? And what about the comprehensive plan where people started working on it 8 to 10 years ago? It's out of date to where we are now. And the city council right now is advocating that Tevia update certain sections of it to be possibly prepared by November, so we have new facts.
And unfortunately, that'll be our job to
And the school board
do
report's
it.
going to come out in December. So what this proposal does, as it's presented, has too many short-term rentals, which will cost us a lot in terms of police, fire, schools, and congestion on the main entrance to what will be Colonial Williamsburg. I am vehemently against approving it as presented, but that's not to say anything negative about what could be done in a more limited way with more longer-term housing and less short-term rental. Okay.
Right. Thank you, sir. Would anybody else like to follow up on those comments? No. Then I'm going to close the public hearing on these two applications and ask for comments from the commissioners. Mr. Hamilton?
It's a very well formulated proposal, but it does seem to me that it is a very dense use of the property. And we seem to be rather concerned about the mixed-use objective comprehensive plan and in other places, which we seem to be hung up with meeting that with the proposal as it's stated. Those are my reservations about where this stands right now.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Ms. Liebel?
I read through the staff analysis and I thought it was extremely thoughtful. I agree with the conclusions of staff that we need to have the mixed-use component in this specific, if we decide to rezone this, and we also need a master plan as called for by the comprehensive plan. As to some of the concerns about development within the community, one of the things I learned when I took some courses on becoming a planning commissioner is that one of the principles that planning commissions need to look at is building infill rather than contributing to urban sprawl. And we need to have places for people who want to live here to live. This property has been undeveloped, as I understand it, for something like 50 years. So it's been sitting here fallow with nothing on it, and it is I view it as a good opportunity to provide housing for people within our community in a fallow piece of property at this point in time. And the alternative use, of course, is the already approved 400-unit timeshare, which is a more intense use of the property.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Liebel. Mr. Kale?
I tend to agree with what Ms. Liebel said. The current existing zoning is for timeshare, which is 400 plus units, and we're at 235. So if this project proceeds, then that's a lot less traffic than can what purpose built tomorrow if by the current zoning code. And I understand with the comp plan on the mixed use component, but just from a practical standpoint, I question that the economic viability of that, because I know that in some of the current mixed-use places, there's already a lot of vacancy in High Street and Midtown Row, and adding to that market. And also, residential there could help the existing businesses that, so I think that's a good thing. And it was also interesting for me to see the fiscal impact. We hear a lot of times that residential drains on the city's resources and is negative impact. I don't know how accurate it is, but it's nice to see that this could potentially be a $5+ million with some additional revenue for the city. And then also it has sat vacant for 50 years. It's eventually going to get developed, and I think the applicant has a proven track record, and as being local and holds these long terms, I think that should carry certainly a amount of credibility. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you. Mr. Granger?
I really appreciate the effort that goes into a plan like this, and I applaud the applicant for the hard work and the earnest conversation that's taken place for this. I remember when there was a hotel there. I remember when there was a lighting store there. And I remember trying to turn left just a couple of days ago off of the street onto Page, and it's a challenge. I think it's a very attractive plan. I just feel like it's too much. And I think just because it hasn't been developed yet doesn't mean we need to develop it now. I think we should develop the right thing at the right time. And we dodged a bullet with the timeshares there. And I feel like this is just a little too big, a little too much. And I would tend to lean towards a little more mixed use, and let's get it right at the right time. And until it's the right thing and the right mix, I don't think we need to move forward with it. But I applaud the effort and appreciate it very much.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Granger. Mr. Tarley?
Thank you. I want to second what Mr. Granger said. I appreciate the presentation, the amount of work that goes into putting one of these things together. It takes a lot of resources, a lot of time, a lot of financial resources just to get it to this point. And I appreciate the, bending over backward to try to cross all the T's and dot all the I's to get us here. Generally speaking, I agree with this use. Mr. Granger said we dodged a bullet with timeshares, but if we don't approve it, it's still approved for timeshares, 400-some units. With the part Mr. Granger left out about that property, there was a long period of time where it was all the rubble from the torn-down building that was there. I agree with the traffic issue on Page and Penniman. And pedestrian, if you're walking along the street there, it's dodgy, and so I would support restrictions on making that left turn coming out of there. But if it was commercial, it would be worse. So clearly, that's not something that would stymie this project. With respect to the comprehensive plan, well, the applicant, the owner of the property would have been the one to make the request to change that. To me, mixed use along that along that road there doesn't make any sense. We're promoting the Edge District in order to get people to go there and spend money to the businesses that are already there, and that area is sort of an outlier. There have been office buildings along there that have been vacant for a long period of time. The businesses that were there didn't survive, and nobody's been willing to come in there to do anything else. I don't see that as a viable commercial area. It hasn't been. History has shown that, and mixed use would be adding additional potential failures, likely failures of commercial use. So to me, residential, whether the density is correct or not, that could be a discussion. But it's certainly an attractive project that would bring additional people to that area of town that the businesses need the support from people and from rooftops. So I generally agree with the traffic recommendations of restricting that left turn. lane. I generally agree with the turn signal. We had this discussion when the Willow Creek conversion was going on, that people would express concerns about coming out of Parkway Drive onto Second Street, so that's an ongoing problem. You know, with respect to even how it looks, to the eye, to the layperson eye like me, the timeshare development wouldn't look any different than an apartment townhome development that would be there. So I'm generally supportive of a use like this in that area to increase the vibrancy. And, you know, we use the railroad track as the dividing line, but right across the railroad track are the same uses of the property. There's the hotel, but next to it there are apartments and the apartment conversions that are down the way. So it's generally residential from Second Street over. I appreciate, you know, the comments and the discussion, but I think generally speaking, some type of use like this is favorable.
Okay, thank you. One of the first comments that I made as a new planning commissioner 6 years ago, I think was something like, we have a comprehensive plan and we need to follow it. The comprehensive plan provides predictability and stability for our city and for development, for future developers. And I tend to agree with staff's recommendation that at least the special use permit does require mixed use, and with all due respect to the applicant's interpretation, I do believe my interpretation is that it is per parcel, not just the entire region. So let me ask our city attorney. We have PCR 22-024, which is the rezoning, which staff supports, but 23-019, the SUP, which staff has recommended against. Is that? It wasn't. It was just against. Okay. Would it make sense to vote on these separately, or should we vote on them together?
On them separately. You can vote on them together.
Just asking for a recommendation.
The project requires both.
The project requires both. Okay.
I have a question
Yes,
for staff. If we vote on to rezone it now, does that preclude timeshares from being built on it in the future?
Timeshares are a permitted use, then they would not be.
There's as a use that could be allowed in the LB3, again, a mixed component, but hotels and timeshares are included in that mixed component list.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so 22-024 is the rezoning, and 23-019 is the SUP. Okay. I would like to vote on these. Yes, sir, of course.
But in the rezoning, are they capping the units at 235 or?
So they have proffer conditions that says they will build no more than 235
Okay,
units.
so it limits that unit count to 235, right? Okay.
The proffer conditions, yes, sir.
Right. Okay. So let's vote on these separately, just in case people want to vote one way on one and one on the other. Is there a motion to recommend approval of 22-024?
I'd recommend approval.
I'll second.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Kale?
Aye.
Mr. Tarley?
Aye.
Mr. Boswell?
Aye.
Mr. Granger?
Aye.
Ms. Liebel?
Aye.
Okay, is there a motion to recommend denial of PCR 23-019, the special use permit?
I'll make that motion to deny it.
I'll second.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Kale?
No.
Mr. Tarley?
No.
Mr. Boswell?
Aye.
Mr. Granger?
Aye.
Ms. Liebel?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. That gets us to PCR 23-016. Ms. Griffin?
Yes, sir. This is a request received by David Julian on behalf of Oyster Point Leasing LLC. This property is under contract, and they are requesting at 3030 Richmond Road to be able to construct a automobile sales establishment, specifically Kia. This is the same owner of the Jeep Chrysler Dodge right up the street, and they would be removing the Kia portion from that establishment now and moving it separately in its own space at 3030 Richmond Road. This years ago used to be the Motel 6, and that maybe will orient everyone to where this is. The applicant is requesting the special use permit, and the size of the building would be between 18,000 and 2,500 square feet, and the zoning ordinance requires for any use that could be a use that may not be incompatible with the zoning ordinance or the character of the area, requiring a special use permit. So as we've discussed before, there are 6 approval criteria, and I'll go through those in harmony with the comprehensive plan, in harmony with the zoning district, and also in harmony with the character of adjacent properties and existing and proposed development. The comprehensive plan calls for this area to be corridor commercial. We do believe that this particular use is in keeping with the corridor commercial land use designation. This is for areas that are oriented to a business, oriented to the car, and it's for tourism, high visibility on commercial sites, and we believe that this particular use is compatible. This is the same land use designation as the Chrysler dealer and the Dodge dealer is now. The next criteria to look at is the zoning district. The zoning district is also the corridor business district. This is B2. This is the zoning district that implements the comprehensive plan. We too believe this is in keeping with the zoning ordinance. Again, the use is allowed by conditional use permit simply if there needs to be conditions placed on it. This district is applied along those streets primarily for access to shops and existing future hotels, restaurants, and other tourism retail uses. And then we look at character. We believe the corridor has a variety of retail establishments. Again, the hotels. We also know the Jeep dealer is also there, and there are other automobile sales along Richmond Road. Approval criteria 4, is it served by essential public services such as streets, drainage facilities, fire protection, and public water and sewer facilities. The proposed use will not result in the destruction, loss, or damage of other features, ecological, scenic, or historic. And then the proposed use shall be designed, sited, and landscaped properly. This is in the CP district, and so it does require review by the Architectural Review Board. It has been to the Architectural Review Board on August 8th for conceptual review. They did have questions and asked them to make changes, specifically to the area that's seen here. That's the darker, the black or brown. They've asked that to be lessened. They've also asked for a calculation of the percentage of windows here. The design guidelines only allows a certain percentage, and they've also asked for a few other material questions in regards to this particular use. This is the conceptual site design. It has gone through review. There are some questions that the city engineer is still having answered. We did get a question about if the intersection created a four-way stop. He has opined that it does not create an intersection, and stops are implied at the entrances onto Waltz Farm Road. And he talks about the PC maybe being able to require stops, but he did not feel that would create a four-way intersection. And then there was also a question about Waltz Farms Drive intersection with Richmond Road, and he has answered those questions, and that would also be something that we would review during the site plan review process. This is, again, is a conceptual design. Staff concludes that the proposed motor vehicle sales and service facility located at 3030 Richmond Road is in keeping with the criteria, and looking at all 6 criteria, we don't see any opposition to either of those. We do recommend, with conditions, that the revised building elevations be consistent with the ARB, and that the Architectural Review Board provide final approval of the buildings and the structures there. Happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is here if you have any questions for him.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. Questions for Ms. Griffin? Okay, we'll go ahead and thank you, and open the public forum. Mr. Getty, I believe you represent the applicant.
Chairman, members of the commission, I'm Vernon Getty of 1177 Jamestown Road. Pleasure to be here representing the applicant. David Julian is principal of the applicant, who would have loved to have been here today, but unexpectedly had to go out of town on business, so unfortunately he can't. Chase Grogg with Landtech Resources Engineers is here as well. Brief history, David, you know, is a Williamsburg resident, and actually sat in your seats for a while as a member of the Planning Commission. His father, Alan, in 1998 bought Pittman Chrysler Plymouth, which at the time was sitting on the land that High Street is now on. In 2003, the city approached him and asked him to consider relocating, which he did, to his existing dealership a block away from this property at 3012 Richmond Road. For many good business reasons, David has decided he needs to separate Kia out from the other brands at his existing dealership, and this property became available, and it seemed like a perfect spot for it. Block from their existing building. This property used to be a Motel 6. It's since been torn down. We agree with Tevia's recommendation, and I will be brief. If you all have any questions, we're glad to answer them, but otherwise would urge you to recommend approval.
Thanks, sir. Any questions for Mr. Getty? Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else, I don't have any speaker cards for this application. Would anybody like to address the commission on this one? Nope. No, I will go ahead and close the public forum on that and ask for any comments from the commissioners. No comments? Okay, is there a motion, to recommend approval of PCR 23-016 as submitted?
So moved.
Second. Can I have a question?
Oh, of course.
Subject to, Ms. Griffin had a couple conditions on there that aren't included in the recommendation.
They were just that the applicant have the rendering that is approved by the Architectural Review Board.
Yeah, and I think they have to do that regardless of what we do. Yeah, there were no other staff recommendations other than that.
No, they were all.
Okay. So that motion has been made and seconded.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Kale?
Aye.
Mr. Tarley?
Aye.
Mr. Boswell?
Aye.
Mr. Granger?
Aye.
Ms. Liebel?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to PCR 23-020. There have been a lot of comments that were emailed to us, and we have read those, and they are all have become part of the public record. One of the emails brought up the question of a conflict of interest with one of the members of our commission, and I would just like to have that addressed if we could before we move forward with this one. Yell, just shout. Oh, there it goes.
So the Virginia Conflict of Interest Act provides for very specific definitions of when someone has a conflict of interest. They have to have a personal interest in the transaction. Personal interest is a defined term in the Code of Virginia, and that includes things like ownership in a business if the ownership exceeds 3% of the matter being brought before the board. An annual income that exceeds or may reasonably be anticipated to exceed $5,000 from ownership in real or personal property or the business. Salary or compensation that exceeds $5,000 annually from the business with business before the board. Ownership of the real property if it exceeds $5,000 in value with business before the board. So unless it meets the criteria in the Code of Virginia, the member of the board does not have a conflict of interest and can participate in the matters that are before the board. It has to meet this definition to constitute a conflict.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Shelton. I'm not aware of any member of the commission having that, meeting any of those criteria to have a conflict. So we will go ahead. Ms. Griffin,
Yes.
here's once again.
Thank you. City has received a request from Derek Robertson to rezone 3.05 acres of property located at 530 Millneck Road. This rezoning would be from the Limited Business Corridor District to the LB4 to the Single Family Dwelling District and the Planned Development Residential District, RS2 to PDR. This is a conceptual site plan of the property. The applicant is requesting to construct 9 dwelling units, 5 single-family detached houses, and 2 duplexes, which equals 4 units. In order to be able to zone PDR, you do have to have a minimum of 3 acres, in which they do meet. There is RPA located on this property. RPA is a resource protection area, and there can be no development that happens in the RPA area. And they have also taken out 20% to constitute for the right-of-way. And the right-of-way just simply means the road system into the development. And so the net developable land is 1.976 acres. The LB3 district, as you see here, this is a snippet of the zoning, official zoning map of the city, and the pink area here shows the property in question. Here is the area off of Cole Lane, Rich Neck subdivision, and here is a separate subdivision here. The subdivision on this side of Cole Lane is zone RS1. And across the street on Millneck Road is zone RS2. As the staff report alluded to, this property was once a part of where CVS and the Citizens Bank and also the office back here, and it fronted along Jamestown Road. It was subdivided in 1995 and has never been developed, so it is now vacant, but it remains limited business. They're asking for it to be residential. In the limited business district, there is no residential uses that are allowed, hence why they're asking for residential zoning. The district that they're requesting, I just want to tell you a little bit about that. The first is RS2. The RS2 zoning district is established as a single-family residential area with low population density, and duplexes are not allowed by right or by special use permit in the RS2. So if you zone RS2, you only can have, for residential uses, single-family detached houses and not duplexes. The PDR district, however, encourages innovative and creative design on larger parcels. And again, the parcel has to be at least 3 acres, and they meet that. But the PDR allows for a variety of housing types. So when anyone requests a PDR, they can have a variety, like townhouses, like duplexes, and like single-family detached. It also increases the density that is allowed on the parcel. And I'll talk about density in a few minutes. The comprehensive plan calls for this particular area, and again, we're talking about the yellow area here. Here you can see there's the business area, the CVS, the bank, and here is the property in question there. It is designated in the comp plan as low-density, single-family detached. It is the lowest residential development intensity, with densities only allowed at 1 to 3 dwelling units per net acre. The comprehensive plan then goes on to say that this particular land use designation can be implemented by 3 zoning districts. And those zoning districts are RS1 or RS2 or PDR, or some combination thereof. Rezoning to RS2 is actually a goal in the comprehensive plan. So the comprehensive plan adopted September 9th of 2021, on page 15-1 states that this property should change the comprehensive plan designation for the vacant property at 530 Millneck Road from office use to low-density, single-family detached residential, and to rezone the property from the corridor office to single-family dwelling RS2. Now to look at density. So the column on the left looks at zoning districts, and we'll follow it across. If the property is rezoned to RS1, the maximum allowable units per net acre is 1 to 3. And then in the RS1, you can only build single-family detached. Based on the net developable area of 1.976 acres, if you multiply that, you get 4. RS2, again, 1 to 3. Dwelling units allowed, single-family detached only, and when you multiply that, maximum of 3, this is all multiplied by 3, you get 6. The PDR from RS1, so the PDR district, again, you have to have 3 acres, and if you are a RS1, if your base zoning is RS1, and you then want to add a PDR, you have a max of 3 units per net developable area that you're able to have. So again, that still gets you the maximum of 6 units. If your base zoning is RS2 and you want to upzone to PDR, you then get 5 units per acre. So 5 times 1.976 gives you 9, which is what the applicant is requesting. This particular parcel is also in the CP district, and the CP district, I won't go through the long of it, but I think everybody here understands the CP district is under the purview of the Architectural Review Board. They're located on major corridors, and it really speaks for making sure when people come into our city that it gives a certain aesthetic. And so any development in the CP district goes through review by that board. The property, again, was subdivided in 1995, so the frontage of that property is no longer on a major corridor. And so on August 8th of this year, the applicant went before the Architectural Review Board and asked for their recommendation or their opinion on if this property deemed to be out of the CP district. And at that board meeting, the ARB unanimously voted to recommend that it was removed from the CP. So our recommendation is to approve the removal from the CP district in conjunction with the ARB. We also recommend rezoning property from commercial to residential, which is consistent with the comp plan. We, however, recommend denial of the rezoning from the LB4 to the RS2 PDR because it exceeds the density that's in the comp plan of 1 to 3 acres. We also don't believe that it's consistent with the character of the community, and it would yield, instead of what we showed on the graph before, 4 or 6, it would actually yield 9. Staff does recommend that the property be rezoned to RS2. Again, if you go back to the graph in your mind, that gives you 6 units, or RS1 PDR. If there is a desire, and we know that housing, we need housing variety, not just in the city, but in the nation. And so if that is a desire, it still gets you the 6 units, but you're able to have a housing diversity and you could do duplexes. Either way, it would still be 6 units that would be allowed. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. Questions from the commissioners? Mr. Hamilton?
Do you have a slide there that illustrates the concept they would use for laying out the property for development?
I have the concept that they provided for 9.
See that?
Yes, sir. There.
Some things fronting on Mill Neck Road plus a street going into the interior of the property with some additional units.
Yes, so the 5 units on the front are single-family detached, that front on Mill Neck Road, and then the street here that goes in are the 2 duplexes with 1, 2, 3, 4 units to equal the 9 units.
None of that's close to the RPA, I guess.
The duplexes are, of course, closer to the RPA. They're not within the RPA, but they are closer to the RPA. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Other questions for Ms. Griffin? Okay, I'll go ahead and open the public forum. I believe Mr. Getty has this one as well.
Chairman, members of the commission, still Vernon Getty of 1177 Jamestown Road. Here wearing two hats today. I'm representing the contract purchaser of this property, Derek Robertson. Chase Grogg also working on this one. Second hat I'm wearing is this is a piece of property owned by me and my sister. And it has remained undeveloped for all these years. It is literally the hole in the donut. If you're familiar with it, it is surrounded completely by development in this part of the city. What is being proposed is a small infill development with 9 units. I would say we agree with 2/3 of Tevia's recommendations with the Corridor Protection District and the residential zoning. And with respect to the zoning, the property is now zoned LB4, as you saw, LB3. And it could be developed by right today as an office development. Obviously have significantly greater impacts than 9 residential units. It would be significantly more traffic, more impervious surface, more lights, really more everything. So, in seeking to downzone the property, I think that's the right thing. And we actually went back to the city at the last comp plan update and requested the change to residential. We think that's the right use for the property. You'll see the shape of the property is somewhat unusual in its relationship to Mill Neck Road, which leads to that sort of flag lot and the location of those 4 duplex units, which are right behind my office building. It seems to us, we recognize that Tevia's analysis that the comp plan calls for 6 units here. This is an opportunity to provide not only single-family detached, but a different housing type and different price point with the 2 duplexes in this small infill development. We think that there is a need for that in the city. These would all be units would be for sale. This is not a rental proposal at all. And we think this is a location where this makes sense. So our request would be to both recommend taking it out of the Corridor Protection District, rezone it, and allow this number of units under the requested rezoning. So we'd be glad to answer any questions. But
Thank you, Mr. Getty. Questions for Mr. Getty or his client?
What size would you envision both the individual houses and the duplex units being?
yeah, I'm gonna. Foresee the houses and duplexes.
Could you
Yes, so
state
the
your
house-
name for the clerk's records?
Derek Robertson, the applicant. Thanks for having us tonight. So everything there was envisioned to be 3 bedrooms, both the houses and the duplexes, at about roughly 2,000 to 2,200 square feet. Houses, maybe 1,900 on the duplexes.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, thank you both.
Thank you.
I have some speaker cards on this application, and I'll call them in the order that I got them from the clerk, and I will mispronounce everyone's name, and I will just give you a blanket apology in advance for doing that. Laura Cote. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I recently purchased, June 5th of this year, 12 Cole Lane, which was the old Getty house. I live there now. And I was unaware of this possibility of the development happening on the August 8th meeting. I was never notified by the city or the builder of the change of architectural review, so I wasn't able to participate. And I found out about this Sunday night because my neighbor left a flyer in my door. So I've had 2 days to prepare for this, and I'm really not that happy. Tavia met with me Monday for 2 hours, and, sorry, I wondered if you could show the slide with my property on that, 12 Cole Lane, because it shows a sensitive area on my property, a ravine, a stream that's ephemeral, and a portion of a wetlands that's on my property that is affected by this development, because if the trees are taken out, I have all the silt going into my stream, and that is actually on my property. So this actually map is not accurate. Also, property lines are not accurate on this map. I have my property here, and Gordon, my next door neighbor on lot 14, is the builder of the houses on Mill Neck, and his property comes to a point. He doesn't have any say. So I'm not sure where the discrepancy is on these maps, but I can provide my site map for you later. I guess I'm really upset because when I looked at the conceptual plan of the city, 2021 that was done, I looked at the overall map. I'm a landscape architect, designer. I do native plants, and I saw that this part of the city really doesn't have a green buffer zone. I realize he has the right to develop this land. I mean, it's been sitting there, I don't call it vacant because there's very old trees on there. We've measured some trees. A white oak, you take the diameter, multiply by 5, you get the age of the tree. Some very old trees in there. We have a very rich habitat in there. Nesting pileated woodpeckers, owls, hawks, box turtles, which are endangered due to habitat fragmentation now, and possibly pink lady slippers, which I'm sure nobody cares about. But my point is, this land is like the only buffer we have for the neighborhood between 199 and Jamestown Road for the noise. So when the trees are taken out and all these houses are there, we're gonna have road noise, light pollution, and let alone how much air filters we're losing. 3 acres of trees, we're worried about climate change. It's like a free air purifier, and we're just gonna cut it down. I'm saying we can't get this land back. I know he owns the land, he can do what he wants with it, but I am actually proposing that the city somehow gets funds and buys this land as a park and includes it with a bike path, walking path. That's my wish. I know I can't get that, so at the least I would like RS1 with no PDR, consistent with what's on Mill Neck Road and John Scott's property. The same housing that's there should stay the same. And I'm not saying I hate duplexes. I've spent 36 years in the military. My husband's still active duty. He's not here right now. He's still out of the area because I bought this house because it came on the market and I loved it. And he's still working active duty and he's not here. So I bought it because, we're retiring next year. And I've lived in Williamsburg 2 times before. I owned a house on Hidden Lake Drive, 2001 to 2005. And then I lived on Marshall Street in Burns Lane from 2010 to 2014. My family's from here. I love this city, and I decided to retire here. I've moved 16 times in 34 years all over the world, and I picked Williamsburg to come back to because I love Williamsburg. I had big plans for my property. I was going to do a native garden and use it as a public forum for the public to come and see native plants and designs on what you can do with native plants. That was my plan for the property, because it was used before by 2 men for kind of nursery work. So I had planned on doing the yard and opening it up to the public for free as an educational garden with labels for all Virginia native plants. And so that was my plan. I am concerned about my ephemeral stream, and it does go on the other map. If you show just the property lines, shows a green space on my property that is wetlands designation. And under the city's 2021 comprehensive plan, it states here, Chapter 2, Land Use Categories, Map 2-1, Existing Land Use, sensitive environmental areas and surface water features with the majority of this area regulated by the city's Chesapeake Bay Preservation Regulations. So my part of my property should fall under that. And his developing this property, which I understand he has a right to, but taking out most of the trees, because if you see this and all that green space, that's not buildable. It's not giving me any green space here. There's no trees there. It's a ravine. You can't build on that. The gray road goes right back. The only flat part of the property, if you walk it, is that gray road right there where the townhouses are. That's the only flat part. The rest of it is unbuildable. It looks like he's giving me a lot of green space, but there's just a ravine there. He can't build there, or he probably would.
Okay,
and I guess
thank
that's
you.
all I have to say.
Right, thank you very much. Yeah, I've been in your house many times. I know that house is a spectacular house.
Spectacular
I do.
home. I'm taking out the invasives now and going to Northern Virginia and getting my native plants, and I'm redoing the yard and labeling it, and it was going to be an educational place for the community.
Okay.
That's what I had planned.
Thank you for being
Thank
here
you for letting me speak. I Appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. Catherine Patelho.
Follow up quite nicely with what Laura, my new neighbor, has just remarked. My name is Catherine Botello, and I am the current president of the Woods HOA. Thank you for hearing me today. The Woods is a development on Woodmere Drive directly across from the CNF Bank and the law offices behind them. Our homes back to this little creek aforementioned, as well as many of the homes on Yorkshire. If you're not familiar with those backyards, you don't see how they turn into torrents of creek when it rains. In fact, my neighbor, my good neighbor Ian and his wife Catherine are paying for their own erosion study because of, in the 3 years that they've lived in the Woods, they have lost 3 feet of their backyard to the creek runoff. Across Jamestown Road, my friend Merle, her home backs to the Walnut Hills Baptist Church. Since the church expanded their parking lot not too long ago, I don't know exactly when, but the 2 little streamlets that converge behind her home have eroded over 10 feet of her backyard, just dropped off, and carved channels that are over 5 feet deep. The sewer top, the manhole on top of that sewer line, now stands 5 feet proud, where it used to be level with the ground. This is a serious watershed issue, these little backyard streams. We're all very fond of the Grand Canyon, as we lovingly refer to it, and I know you know that there are serious surface water problems. This particular neighborhood and this 3-acre parcel, which acts as a beautiful buffer against erosion, needs to be preserved. It needs to be preserved. I understand that there is a great need for housing in the city, and there are a lot of pressures for development. But where we develop is absolutely critical to the wealth and health and safety of these neighborhoods. So I would just like to register as a voice of caution and recognize that increasing the density of this parcel is probably unwise. I wish it would remain as woods. That's not up to me, I understand, but at least let it remain in keeping with the original comprehensive plan. We have to slow down development a little bit. We need more housing in the city, but again, we need to be very careful about where we're putting these homes. The water is there, and it's going to find a way, and it has found its way in destructive ways, and will continue to get worse if we chop down all the trees. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Mr. Scott Jones.
Thank you, Chair Boswell and Commission. Grateful for the opportunity to be able to speak with you today. I reside at 522 Mill Neck Road, an adjoining property. I think my thoughts have been expressed in an email that was distributed to all of the Commission members. So I will try to keep my comments brief in a blatant attempt to curry favor with the Commission. I think that the previous statements are very consistent with my feelings that if this property should be rezoned, it should be rezoned RS1. That is the zoning classification that is compatible, that is consistent with the neighborhood, and which is compatible with the neighborhood at large in terms of the features of the neighborhood. I'm here because I'm concerned and to present a human face, and I'm afraid of what the consequences will be for this specific neighborhood should the proposed plan be approved. The proposed plan is 9 units. There are 10 houses on that section of Mill Neck Road. It might be small in scope from a developer standpoint, but it is massive from the neighborhood standpoint. I don't think that the addition of 2 additional units, RS1 versus the other options recommended by the Planning Commission, by the Planning Department, is going to solve Williamsburg's housing crisis. And I do think that the addition of those units will have an amplified effect on that neighborhood and on our community at large. So I ask the Commission to consider the effects of this development and not just look at the potential benefits, but also the serious consequences for the residents, the serious negative consequences for the development of that area for the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Ms. Payne. I see you, Dr. Cranbuell. You have to wait to those that turned in their cards. Ms. Payne.
#02 John Tyler Lane. I've been very interested in what my predecessors have said, and I agree with it. The biggest concern is the loss of all those trees, and also the traffic is horrific on John Tyler Lane. When we moved there 18 years ago, we thought, oh gee, nice, quiet little road. Phew. And people just think it's a place to race. And we have young families with young children. I'm concerned people who live on that street with dogs can no longer walk on John Tyler Lane because the dogs are so afraid of all the traffic going through. So if we're adding still more traffic, that concerns me. But I think the buffer of trees then we won't feel like we're in a nice, quiet little neighborhood anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Hudgens, you are next.
Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, staff, Ms. Griffin, thank you for all of your hard work and service that you give tirelessly to our community. I got involved in looking at this project about a week and a half ago. I didn't even know what was going on. And I echo all the sentiments. I think that could you, Ms. Griffin, would you mind going back to your slide that shows the Cole Lane subdivision? I think it was another one that showed more of Cole Lane, was it not? Yeah, okay, so if you look at that, the lime green, and you all know Cole Lane, all of that is RS1. The lime green continues onto Mill Neck Road, and all of these parcels are the ones that adjoin this property on the same side of Mill Neck. All of it is RS1, all of it is single-family detached dwellings. The RS2 seems to be a little strange, but there are some RS2 units on the other side of Mill Neck Road, and all of those are single-family detached dwellings. You've got house sizes, lot sizes ranging from 0.3 to 1 acre. There is an area duplex to be found anywhere in this area. So my major complaint after having researched this in terms of what the applicants are looking for here is that this is a huge ask. It's a huge ask, and that it's not compatible with every neighborhood that's around it. So I think it should be RS1, no PDR, and they should be allowed to, if you approve the rezoning, to the 4 units that Ms. Griffin has calculated for an RS1 single-family detached neighborhood. But that's in keeping with all of Cole Lane. It's in keeping with the same side of the road. Mill Neck, the applicant is a sophisticated purchaser of real estate. They had purchased the lots up and down on that side of the road. They know what this neighborhood looks like and what it's confused of. The applicant states that and I think accurately so. This is an infill. Well, as an infill and basically an RS1 area, my concern is what precedent are we setting for when, say, the church on the other side of the road decides it's going to close up shop and is going to look back at this parcel and say, well, we approved duplexes here. Duplexes just don't have a place here. PDR doesn't have a place. It barely meets the threshold of 3 acres for a subdivision. So I hope that the Planning Commission will deny that type of rezoning that Ms. Griffin has recommended in her staff report, and if anything, stick with RS1, single-family detached. 4 units is more than enough. It's consistent with what's there, and it doesn't create a dangerous precedent for all of us. As you know, I live at 5 Canterbury Lane, Mill Neck, over across the street, and I am concerned in the future that as we continue to have housing pressures in the city, that more and more people are going to come in with infills and then point to little pockets of zoning that we approved that really don't match the outlying areas. You all are deciding this de novo, new, what should do with the comprehensive plan, as Ms. Griffin points out in her report, calls for single-family detached dwellings, low density. So I hope that y'all will hold to that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hudgens. Dr. Cranbuell, you have some comments? And a 5-minute timer this time?
Just so you know, I'm totally in favor of this kind of housing, and I think the PDR is a great contribution to how we deal with infill, if that's the term. One thing that I don't understand, because it also happened in my neighborhood, who deals with the how buildable the land is, and the water runoff, and the topology? I mean, I didn't see any aerial views. I tried to pull it up on my cell phone, but I couldn't get it. Works fine on my. So it seems to me that, among other things, the Planning Commission, and I don't know if it's part of your role, but it seems like somebody has to have it, so it should be you, is to look at the implications of when you build something and where the water goes. That first 2 comments seem to me to be extremely important, and so I don't see how you can improve anything until you really understand the implications of the neighboring lots with respect to the fill. The issue of the trees, well, I mean, if you're going to build, you're going to cut down trees, but it seems like provisions could be put in to control. Just, you don't clear cut. You propose something, and then it gets reviewed by the Planning Commission and our city planner. So, and now how dense it is, I'm glad I don't sit in your chairs, because I don't have an answer for that. It's complicated, but whether you had 5 single-family units and not a duplex, yeah, that's a difficult decision. But I do think understanding the topology and the land and the implications of the other lots in terms of the water is extremely important, because I saw a lot that got built, and in the end they built a giant hole in the ground with connected to the city sewer, which seems to me totally wrong, because the runoff water shouldn't be mixed with the sewage water. But anyway, so I don't know what that answer is, but I'd be interested to know whether that's something that you do look at and can look at, and then decide that would relate to how many units would be built, what kind of lots they are. So, but thank you for all you're doing.
Great. Thank you, sir. Anyone else with comments on this particular application? Oh, I do have another speaker card coming. Thank you. Ms. Fairbanks.
Well, thank you for hearing me for the second time. I think this is a first for me to speak twice in one day. I decided to talk to you about this project because I'm a former homeowner at 515 Mill Neck Road, and so I'm across the street. I was across the street from this development, and my backyard neighbors were the office park buildings, and so and my lot, I believe, was about a half an acre for a 3-bedroom home. I disagree with Mr. Getty, who interestingly, when I purchased that house on Mill Neck, my realtor said, "You're never going to have neighbors until the Gettys sell or develop." You know, here we are. And, but I do disagree with him in that a business would have more of an impact than, 9 family units. I haven't heard anybody speak to whether or not these things, the possibility that these dwellings could become investment properties. And then you've got renters, and then you've got 3 non-related people per unit. That will be, in my opinion, more traffic and an impact on that area than, say, a small dental practice or a physical therapist practice who had a handful of parking spaces and, 1 patient per hour or something in that range. And I want to tell you that having and ease the minds of the people who live right there now is that the office park, they were very nice neighbors. Everybody's gone by 5 o'clock. There's nobody there on weekends. There weren't the lights like CVS kind of lights, and I really enjoyed it there, and I might still live there if I could have pried Jeff Fairbanks out of his house. But I couldn't do that, and so I sold that property. And I will say now, I probably wouldn't be interested in buying here if there were going to be less than 2 acres that were going to have anywhere from 6 to 9 dwellings on them. That seems pretty high density and high impact to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fairbanks. Okay, anyone else who has not spoken that wants to address the commission? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to go ahead and close the public forum. Ms. Griffin, could you put that chart up with LB1, LB2, and the density? There was a comment that confused me. That I was not sure about the one you had.
Hold on 1 second.
Right, there we are. Okay. Good. Okay, so thank you. Comments from the commission?
I don't mind jumping in if
Mr.
it's all right.
Mr. Granger.
So, I'm a 28-year resident of Mill Neck Road. I raised my family in the house that we're in on the other end of Mill Neck Road, and I'm familiar with it prior to my living there, as I was one of John Fletcher's patients. He was my pediatrician, and that was his office that's across the street. That's still there. I have little fear of it becoming an office park because it doesn't seem practical for an office park. I think the notion of a residential, low-density residential units there is reasonable and in keeping with the neighborhood. Traffic, I've walked that street many a time, some with a stroller, some with a wagon, and some with just my wife. And when there's another car coming, you don't have another place to go. Certainly driving it, you do have to stop and kind of scooch off to the side. So I like what some of the other folks had to say about the green space. It's true, and just because it's not developed doesn't mean it needs to be developed. But there's some rights out there that we need to keep in mind, and let's make sure that it's consistent with the neighborhood. I tend to think low density is the way to go there, and not a fan of the duplexes at all there.
Thank you, sir. Other comments? I'm not gonna call out anybody by name. Just jump in.
I just think it needs to be consistent with the rest of the surrounding neighborhood.
Thank you.
I agree. Certainly no problem with removing the CP district. And I think the highest and best use is residential. But I agree with Mr. Granger and Mr. Hamilton that maybe 6 single families more conforming to the neighborhood based on the concerns that we've heard. And also just, I wanted to make a point, there's been a lot of discussion about water quality and who oversees that. I think it gets lost sometimes in these, that this is a rezoning and there's still a process where site plans are reviewed and submitted by engineers and Mr. Smalls and his team, and there's a lot of back and forth in that where they're scrutinized and Virginia standards, federal standards are all upheld. So, and that's also a public process too, where this committee on a site plan committee, subcommittee reviews those plans in public. So there is some very good checks and balances, and I just want to make that point. Sometimes we get a rezoning different from what it actually is, and that's handled at a different hearing to protect your interests. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. And our site plan review committee meets on Wednesday mornings, the same day as Planning Commission, and so you can watch the public records for public notices for when that's going to take place. That is part of what the Planning Commission does. Ms. Liebel, did you have?
I agree with what my fellow planning commissioners have said about the relative density of this neighborhood. And although as much as I would like to see more affordable workforce housing in our community, 2 duplexes will not even scratch the surface of the need. It won't be a blip on the radar. So that particular use of this property does not strike me as being very compelling. I believe that the character of the neighborhood being single family, as the city is recommending to look at a different type of single family zoning is more appropriate. But what the applicant's actually asking for is LB4 to RS2/PDR, and that's what we are called upon to vote.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Liebel.
And nothing to add except I also found very compelling the conceptual drawings of what the homes would look like in that area, and I think they're very compatible with the homes along Mill Creek. So.
Okay, thank you. A lot of references are made to the comprehensive plan. I think
Mill Neck.
Well, we'll just move right past it. We'll move right. They'll fix it. They'll fix it in the records.
Mill Creek is across the street.
Yeah, the clerk will fix that in the records. Don't worry. I was going to say that there are a lot of references have been made to the comprehensive plan, and I believe Mr. Granger and I are the only commissioners who toiled through the comprehensive plan. The last review for what took us 3 years, I think. Yes. There was a global pandemic going on outside, but we were in here working on the comprehensive plan the whole time, or occasionally on Zoom. And the current applicant, came to us and asked us to change the comprehensive plan designation from business to RS2. And we thought, public hearings, everybody had the opportunity to come and speak, and we thought that was a good idea. And so we did make that change in the comp plan to RS2, and that is the designation in the comp plan. And so this is the next logical step in doing that. I don't see a compelling reason. As I said on the first application, we have a comprehensive plan. We need to follow it. It makes for predictability. And I think this is just the next logical step from that process of changing the comp plan to RS2. This is just implementing that zoning that's contemplated by the plan, and I think anything beyond that, I don't see a compelling reason to increase the density beyond what the comprehensive plan contemplates. So with that said, I'll just call on the city attorney again just to make sure that we can we make a motion to approve the change of zoning to RS2 and to remove it from the CP, or how do we do that?
So your motion should be to, if it's to approve, it should be to approve a recommendation to City Council that the property be rezoned to RS2 and deny the request to rezone to PDR with proffers, and then to approve the CP district removal.
Okay, and we can, no ma'am. Okay, so we can do that in one motion? Okay. Be careful, watch me now, okay. Sir?
I just want to, so RS2 would be allow 6 single-family detached units.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
May I speak to that? That is the maximum allowed, but that
Okay.
doesn't mean that the property can fit that many, because there are square footage requirements for lot sizes. So these are maximum allowables.
Maximum allowables. Okay, so I'll try it. Is there a motion to approve PCR 23-020 as to the change in zoning to RS2 and to deny it as to the PDR and to approve it as to the removal from the CP?
And if you could amend that motion to include a denial of the proffer as well, because this includes a proffer that would only attach itself to the PDR district.
And to recommend denial of the proffers that were attached to the, if that's about the most confusing motion we've ever heard. Does everyone understand the motion? Okay, okay, that's the motion.
Is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Second.
Okay.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Kale?
Aye.
Mr. Tarley?
Aye.
Mr. Boswell? Mr. Granger?
Aye.
Ms. Liebel?
Aye.
I usually ask if there's a motion, but since that one was so
Yes,
convoluted,
thank you.
and
Thank you.
with the advice of council all the way through, I thought we'd do it that way. Okay, we don't have site plans, we don't have unfinished business, new business, or other, and I'm going to defer the commission reports until the next time. Anything else from the commission? Okay, thank you all. We are adjourned.